And I wondered if you practice your spell casting face in the mirror.
I mean, if I did, it wouldn't look like it did. It does. It would be a lot prettier.
Hey, David, how you doing?
Great. Thank you, Henry. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Very well.
So the last time we saw Geralt, he finally came face to face with Ciri in the woods. Can you tell me a little bit about filming that moment?
Well, filming that moment, obviously within the books, it carries an enormous amount of weight. And for me, reading the books, it was very, very emotional. With the way the show was adapted, it was approached slightly differently. It was the first time they're meeting rather than the second time, and it was just about conveying that's trying to convey that same emotion without the story sort of destiny, and it was enjoyable because it's that moment where you see Cirilla, who has been running so much from all the things that are trying to lay her low, and Geralt running from his own things as well. And then there's no hesitation in either of them to have that bond almost immediately. And it was I thought Freya did an incredible job, and she really sold that moment of relinquishing her safety into the arms of this person who's still a stranger.
People linked by destiny will always find each other.
And in season 1, there was this repeated line about Witchers having no human emotion, but we see that both Ciri and Yennefer put that crack in his armor, sort of. And I wondered if in season 2, do we continue to see a less stoic side of Geralt? And was it sort of freeing to you as an actor to be able to open up a little more?
Well, yes, I think you put it perfectly by putting a crack in his armor, because, of course, witches have emotions. It is not something that they suddenly lose when they become witches, but it is a myth that they perpetuate. And so in season 2, I campaigned very, very hard to have more of the Geralt from the books appear in the show. And that requires a character who is more intelligent, who has some wisdom to him, who has a philosophical lean. Yes, he's still grumpy and petulant at times, but I wanted to show the three-dimensional character rather than just the grumpy old snowman living in the mountain who just grunts and says the F word every now and again.
Thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I enjoy the show so much, and you're so wonderful in it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Hi, Freya.
Hi.
So after an entire season of either walking or running, you finally get to stop a little bit.
Yes, it was a major relief. I was like, thank God, some good content for my character.
I will say I noticed such a maturity in both, I don't know, really in your performance in this season that I was so impressed of the confidence in the character, and wondered if that came from the writing or more familiarity with the character yourself. But it was great.
I think it was probably a mixture. I think season 1, the writing only offered me so much to do with the role, you know? I mean, it's more of an obvious typical strength for this season, right? So I think that is to do with, to a certain extent, the writing. You know, I could only deal with what I was given for season 1. And I think, you know, I'm always learning through every job I do. And I always feel like I then go into the next job with something else to bring to it. So it will have been a mixture of those things, I'd say.
And there was so much made of Geralt's bathtub scenes in season 1, but you get to have your bathtub moment pretty quickly in season 2.
I know. God, I forgot about that. Yeah.
I can't imagine it's as comfortable as it looks.
No, it not particularly. The water they'd made warm, which was lovely. And I was like, you know, that's better than being freezing. But I had to basically be underwater at the start. And they put these things under the bath so that I could hold onto it. So that, because otherwise I was just floating. And I was like, guys, I'd have to stay under the water and then hear through the water them shouting action and then come up, because obviously I come up out of the water. Surprisingly more, you know, difficult to get the timing right, because obviously I'm under the water and everything. So actually, yeah, it was a stressful bath. Wasn't the most relaxing bath I've ever had.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Love the work you've done in the show. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks for a great Great
Thanks.
interview.
Thank you. Bye. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Anya and Mimi, I want to start out with you. I love watching both of your facial expressions when you're casting spells in the series. And I wondered if you practice your spell casting face in the mirror.
I mean, if I did, it wouldn't look like it did. It does. It would be a lot prettier. No, I don't. It just happens in the moment. I don't know for you, Mimi.
I practice in front of other actors. I probably did in front of you, actually, where I'm kind of
probably.
going,
We're like, yeah, great.
yeah, like that one. Less tense.
Yeah.
Joey, do people on the street ever toss coins at you?
Yeah, but for very different reasons. No, a lot of people some people like to sing it. You get the odd person humming it on the tube, but it's always quite quiet and quite respectful. And a lot of people just sort of hum it to see if it is me.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty.
And then go like, and I'm like, I know.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
You play into it.
I give them a little wave.
Well, speaking of Jaskier, he was certainly a bit wounded last time we saw him.
If life could give me one blessing, it would be to take you off my hands. See you around, Geralt.
So how does he come back into the story in season 2?
I think, we left Jaskier on a mountaintop and he got down somehow. And in the interim, he's kind of rebuilding himself and reimagining himself. He's kind of taking all of the turmoil of what went on at the Battle of Sodden and adapting to his surroundings and becoming darker and maybe a little bit more emotionally vulnerable. So when we see him in season 2, he's it's not that he's a changed man, but I think he's really enjoying finding out bits to him that he usually would keep a little bit more guarded, I guess.
And Anya and Mimi, you two spend a lot of time so far together in season 2. Was that a fun reunion for you personally after having sort of followed your own stories in season 1?
We have such fun but it was a brutal first week of filming. I think their characters really weirdly complement each other. I mean, they're bonded, so strongly by their experiences, but they've got a lot to deal with. They're on a kind of big journey of self-discovery aside from one another. So
yeah, and Anya, speaking of brutal filming, the thing that stuck out to me about your character in those first few episodes is just how dirty and bloody and wet and sweaty you are the entire time. And I'm like, how much makeup do you have, and how much of a relief must it be to get a shower at the end of the day?
She just turns up on set like that.
I do. I'm ready. Otherwise it takes like 3 hours. Do you know what? Weirdly, I feel more comfortable in that state than I do in any other state. It's weird. I mean, when you're covered in that much mud, you're like, I can do anything, you're ready, you're alert. And there's no glamour with Yennefer. There's no glamour at all. Even the beautiful costumes are drenched in wet and mud.
Well, you're all wonderful in it, and I love this show. And thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Kim, you've been acting for more than 30 years, and here you are in your 50s fighting bounty hunters on Killing Eve, sword fighting monsters in The Witcher. Did you ever expect this is where your career would end up?
I never expected anything. It's like everything is like on a journey, But listen, when we are coming up with these kind of shows now, that I'm so happy that we're doing these shows, man. In old days, we couldn't tell these stories, Now, at least we have the opportunity to do it. So I'm so happy to be involved with that. And it's such a lovely joy for me. I've always been a big fan of manga shows, and these stuff. But the West is just coming in now. I'm happy for it. I'm happy.
Christopher, after spending years in the woods and the snow in big, heavy costumes on Game of Thrones, why come back to the fantasy genre instead of taking a role where you could just wear pajamas in front of a fire all day?
Well, I had the pajamas. It just it looked like a beast costume. So for me, there's a huge, nice pajamas.
How much of it was, if any, was practical makeup, and how much was computer generated?
Well, it was 95% prosthetics. So the whole suit and everything is like the real thing. And then I had a small opening in my face with a camera and lots of dots to capture every expression I had. But the character is so many nuances in his play, and we really wanted that sense of emotion to get through the CGI process, right? So they did a fantastic job, and I when I look at his eyes, it feels like my eyes, and that's that's greatly done, I think.
The look of a man who's worried he's lost his touch.
The look of a man who's wondering why his old friend is cheating.
You got me there. Magic knives.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Lauren. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so curious about the room behind you. I have to say, I see like E.T., there's X-Men. You've got a lot going on there.
I do. It's my guest bedroom, and this is just how it looks normally.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Speaking of loving it, I am loving what I'm seeing of Witcher Season 2 so far. We've waited 2 years for it. And I know there were delays due to COVID and everything going on in the world, but I wondered if there was actually any surprising benefits to those delays.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, I would never want to go through that again, obviously. And having 2 years between seasons coming out, but more than that, obviously, having the world go through what it went through, our cast, our crew, laying off people for 5 months, that part I would never want to do again. But one of the things that shifts when you have extra time is you get to reflect. Television is always on a schedule. So we are always, writing the next episodes as we're producing these, and you never really get to stop and see it all as a whole. And that's what that break gave to us. We had months to dig back into the scripts and make sure that we were telling the right stories and telling them in the right way. And I got to talk a lot during that time with Henry, with Freya, with Anya, just keeping in touch as friends, but also making sure that they were loving the direction of the show.
Was it a relief to finally have all your characters on the same timeline for season 2, more or less?
Yes, very much so. It is obviously, I'm a huge defender of the timelines, but I do think that the audience is going to find it a lot easier to follow, and even new audiences can come in and follow it right away. But more than that, it's an opportunity for our characters to finally be together. The promise of these 3 characters coming together as a family, that's where I started the show. That's what I always wanted to get to. And I think everyone will notice Ciri and Geralt, for the first 6 episodes or so, bring out completely different sides in each other. And that's really how those characters grow. So that was a wonderful opportunity.
How much do you look at fan reaction? And did you tweak or change anything in season 2 based on something you saw? And lastly, was there anything about the reaction to season 1 that surprised you?
Absolutely. I love interacting with fans, and that means hearing the bad as well as the good. I was stunned by how many people loved it. I have to be honest, and so that was great incentive to keep going and keep pushing, especially during COVID when we were all so tired and just kind of wanted to rest a little bit. But I have to say, I really sort of paid attention to how the different audiences were reacting. Because, of course, we had book fans, we had video game fans, and we had people who'd never even heard of The Witcher until it came onto the air. And so trying to sort of juggle all of those POVs and what people wanted. So Henry and I, for instance, talked a lot about going back more toward the Geralt of the books, which he's got great internal dialogue in the books. He's not always saying it to other people. You can't do internal dialogue on television. So we had this great relationship with Ciri, and we get to see him access his softer side, and a little bit more soul and a little bit more paternal side. And I think across the board, all of our characters, they go a little bit deeper and a little bit, you get to see a little bit more of them. And I think audiences are going to really love that.
Well, I'm loving it, Lauren. Thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Nice to meet you.
Something has changed, Geralt. The world's acting strange these days. The North and South at war. Monsters roaming when they should be hibernating. Maybe it's the end of days. Are you in the
I've lived through 3 supposed end of days. It's all horseshit. This continent was meant for no one. None of us will have any peace until there are no monsters left in the world.
That's my home. My fight.
Your precious leader's after something. You're a pawn to get to it.
Rebuild our forces. Strengthen our numbers. We are an empire. The war's just begun.
Fear is an illness. It can consume you. Our best chance is to face it. Are you ready for this?
If what you say about that girl's power is true, you can't help her.
The man, the myth, the legend.
We need your help.
Fine, but first, gentlemen, it's been an honor. What? I made new friends. Get over it. Jealous?